Hi. Alrighty, now everything is plugged in. There will doubtless come a day when I am not there to do the live stream, but today is not that day. I'm here and we're going to do some plugin making. And I've got a number of ideas that I'm going to pursue. Look, there we are with my wonderful retro machine that we're going to start by making retro plugins on. And two ideas are sort of at the top of my mind today. One of them is as follows. I see a channel X. Channel X includes a IIR filter, kind of like the one that I just put out this last weekend. People lost their minds about how much they liked the one from last weekend. So I'm wondering whether maybe it might be a good idea to update Channel X with its built-in filter to be retro bass. And it is certainly a thought. We shall see. Might be a bit of a big change, might not be as big of a change as you'd think, because it's not the most noticeable of IIR filters. And the other idea came from, hey Chad, came from being on the Surge forum, the Surge Discord. There was a guy who was inventing some kind of weird derezzing style processing based on wavelet calculations or something. And it looked very much to me like it was doing some funny sort of frequency rezzing. And I'm not really quite sure how he was doing it. But I was like, oh, that's neat. What if you did a frequency rezzing thing where you were tracking like how much high frequency information was happening and going on the basis of that? And then one of the Surge people predictably was like, no, that's not what this is. And I went, okay, that's fine. But now I'm going to do the idea that I had, which he immediately was like, no, you're wrong. That's not the thing that this is. Fine. I'm going to do the thing that it isn't. That is one of the things I have in mind for today. So that one's going to start off right away, because it irritates me that I was trying to toss around ideas and stuff, and dude comes in. This is a guy who used to work for Native Instruments. I like him well enough. He's fine. It's just that he does have a tendency of being like, nope, that's a stupid idea, immediately. And there's no arguing with that. It's just a thing. So let's see. Date modified. Well, that's roughly what I have in mind here. Don't know quite why it's doing what it's doing, but here is the most recent derez that I did. Let's do another one, shall we? Hey, you're quite welcome. Yeah, I was thinking, I think it is you that was like, oh, I can't wait for Channel X. So I was wondering whether maybe what might be a fun thing is in the process of developing Channel X, maybe what I should do is incorporate the thing that RetroBass does into Channel X. Who knows? Maybe that'll make it even better. We can but try. But I'm going to attempt a couple of things today. That could be one of them. That could be one of them, is doing a Channel X that not only has everything else I'm incorporating, but also incorporates that technique. Could be good. But the other thing is, let's do another variation on derez. Let me first check to see whether this was a stereo processor. It is not. Hopefully this will work and doesn't just randomly crash. Sometimes it randomly crashes on me. Old version of Xcode here. So if it does that, there's nothing I can do about it other than to restart it. It wasn't you? I am not sure what I would do that is the same, seeing as that is making the even harmonics sort of warble and go out of phase based on what's being subtracted. So I can't really envision anything that would be exactly the same for highs. That's my first answer. By the way, I hope I will be reasonably with it today as far as being responsive to chat and all that kind of stuff. I've been going kind of hard lately. It's actually quite likely that I'm going to end up taking time around Labor Day off. I feel like that is the most appropriate holiday for me to take off. We'll see. Who knows? Maybe not. More will be revealed there. As you know, the way I go about doing this kind of thing is starting from a working base and moving on from there. God, excuse me, I'm yawning. I'm yawning and my stomach is rumbling, and by the time today is out, I will have thoroughly earned my tacos. I'm slow enough out the gate today that I didn't even have my tacos ready to thaw out properly. Instead, I just got them out and I sat them on the counter and put a sort of bread loaf tin over them. So there's a sort of little mini refrigerator sitting around, defrosting them, hopefully in an appropriate way. I also have lettuce for today, but the tomato is a tomato where I am testing to see if it causes me to explode. The way this kind of thing works is I have tacos twice a week when I do the live streams. And so far, I have not been caught out by any of the produce things that cause you to explode. So I have lucked out. Part of it is because I'm buying produce that isn't in bags from Taylor Farms. So there is that. But you never can tell. So every time I get through a Tuesday and I know that I have the other half of the same tomato for Thursday and the same lettuce that I had on Tuesday for a Thursday, I'm like, yay, I have a Thursday where I'm not going to explode or die based on eating vegetables like a normal person does. So the concept for this one is going to be as follows. I feel like it should be possible to make a downres that is not simply taking a frequency, but is doing some form of counting, not necessarily zero crosses. You could count zero crosses, at which point you would be downresing to ridiculously low frequencies. But I think what I can do is count reversals. And that's going to pretty neatly do obvious things to the sound. And then we can use the existing DRes stuff, possibly adding, I can add a thing where rather than strictly doing connecting of lines, I can also do square waves. That might work. We can but try. If I was to do that, I would add another control. And maybe what I should do is make it build first before getting into it. So let's do what we can. Because I do indeed have notions about how I can make this be a thing. I think what you would say is that most of the produce that had issues came through a particular company that lobbied the current government to be exempt of all forms of monitoring or quality control. Like, they literally lobbied the government to be let off inspections and things. And this is what you can expect when people carry on like that. Let's assume I'm going to want to do another. There. So all I got to do is take that away, and then I can start bringing in a parameter E and building this to do what I had in mind. But first we're going to make it work. First we're going to make a duplicate of what already existed. And I'm seeing some of my compatriots in plugin development dealing with new things coming out. Like, there is some new, with very few exceptions, I'm having a hard time pinning down any exceptions. They're all diving into the AI coder thing. But now they're also responding to something where some AI company is now going, we're getting into making plugins now. And so they're all trying to figure out, like, well, can we put into our EULA, you may not train AIs on the output of our plugins, thus thereby like running test signals through it and exactly black box reverse engineering and cloning anything that you have. And I'm sitting here in the open source world going, okay, I guess you're asking these people to respect copyrights now. Good luck with that. Yeah, my tomatoes might be from Canada or the United States. I'm up in Vermont, so don't know. Anywho, I think I've just done the last bit that I needed for making this build. Of course, I got to do 2 of them in order to find out. We got to do this one build, and then we got to do it again to see if it does anything. Also, I don't remember if I updated this. Oh, I did. Hey, we've got our test bed. We can close DRes4 now and begin to move forward with whatever this is going to be. Again, there's a couple of changes I'd like to make, and I feel that should is a strong word. Might be good. We're going to find out. I'm going to dive fully into hacking away with plugins today, and we're going to see what is possible to make happen. And yeah, I'll perhaps see what I can get out of Channel X. Again, the thing that I'd like to do in Channel X is see whether I can keep it basically being what it is, but also incorporate what I brought to RetroBase. That has huge. I rarely see people respond as positively to a plugin as that one. That one, everybody seemed to enjoy what it does. So, seems good. God, excuse me. One of the things that I'm doing, I recently had a doctor appointment where we were going over some blood work and checking out how I was doing regarding a pre-diabetes thing that she was keeping an eye on. And turns out I have done wonderfully well. It's part of why I'm really hungry right now, is because I've been doing wonderfully well with my managing my diet and health and stuff, and the warning signs of prediabetes went away. So that's cool. I'm pleased with that. Let's see, what were we looking for? We were looking for DRes, so that's going to be under D. And we're going to see whether DRes 5 works. Bezier filter here. And here's down res with no darkening. So this went over pretty well, all things considered. But the challenge there is that this doesn't do everything that I would want. So let's start playing with it some more. In particular, I can jump right into here and duplicate param D and make it be param E. And then it'll be available to use almost immediately. We'll have 5 controls. And we maybe can move all of these down one step. And we'll have the other control called square. And move these down one step. But square can default to 0. Because I should be able to do a thing where if we increase this control, rather than connecting the lines, it'll start not completely connecting the lines together. Instead, it'll just do a sample and hold. And I have a very clear idea as to how I can go about doing that, but it will involve reversing what the control is. I'll explain what that means in a moment. And it builds, but we're not using it yet. I shouldn't have hit Command B, but it's no harm is done. It's fine. I got to change everything in order to have it actually do anything useful. But it's fairly likely that I can make this do what I had in mind almost immediately. The part that needs to change to make this part work is very direct. So you become E. You can become D. You can become C. Meaning now there needs to be something for K param B, and it's going to be equals and that's going to become param B. So now we've got a variable, and if it's set to 0, then it is going to be 1, and if it is cranked all the way up, it will start to become 0. I can simply start using this in a particular place. And it's going to be in here somewhere. So after the filtering, there's two different layers of Bezier-based filtering here. And here's the part where this is using. So x equals point cycle times s trim. Here's where we reset stuff. Here's where this starts getting added. Here, this looks like a correction factor of some kind. Yeah, that's a correction factor of some kind, but I'm also going to want to incorporate this. So x equals point cycle, input sample L equals point AL. If this ends up zeroing out, what's going to happen is we get a square wave. And I'll demonstrate that once I make it actually work. So we're starting with x equals point cycle. We're using it in this way. But now we also get to dial it back to 0 if we want. Hey, Sankara-san, Pakira, I'll show you. As usual, when I'm trying to code something and I'm exploring the idea of what I'm trying to make do what I want it to do, I don't always speak English very well. My apologies. It's just the way that rolls. Sometimes I'm trying to pursue an idea that isn't being easily expressed. Let's see, do we have the app closed? Yes, we do. So what I can do is open this back up again. We got a sound. And then if we apply DRes 5, and this needs to be set to, it's getting a degree of boost going on. If we do this, and then I make it so that I can see what it's doing, we are getting a behavior where it is drawing stuff using a DRes and connecting the dots. Like I can undo that again. We're back to a curve here. And then if I make it be downresed even more and apply it, we will really see that, at least if I can show it on the screen, give me a chance, here we go, that we are deresing it, we are doing a sample collection point at these points, and then we're connecting the dots between them. So the change that I just made is as follows. I should be able to set it to square, and then it'll do this. Now it's making a sample and hold square wave type behavior. That sounds like this. Or, okay, so hang on. Okay, we undid. That's a square wave behavior. And then if we have it connecting the dots, it is drawing sort of triangle shapes between those points. So we get bring in corners as it fails to completely go all the way to the following point. And then, just like the bright and basis filter controls, apply before and after. We can make it be softened. And it softens up to this much. The difference being, we're down-resing this much, so we have that, and then we have the bright turned down, meaning that what we're going to get is now square waves with rounded corners. Here's an example. So this is Bezier-based corner smoothing. And it's still fairly steep, but it is drawing a Bezier curve between those points. We can also soften it just a little tiny bit. Meaning that now, when we have this zero hold thing, we've just smoothed off these corners in a characteristic way. It can't do the full high frequency behavior that this would be if it was fully just sample and hold behavior. Instead, it's softening the transitions using a Bezier filter. And there's what you get out of it. So here's what we have sort of throughout. If we're not down resing, nothing much is happening. If we're down resing, we can get a softened type effect, or we can get a brightened type effect like this. And then we can soften that with the bright filter. And to take away lows with the basis filter. So far, so good. So that is where we're at so far. We just added a thing where rather than just having DRes connect the downsample points, it's now able to either not perfectly connect the downsample points, and I could make that gain a degree of subtlety. So what's gain a degree of subtlety mean? It means as soon as you introduce square, you immediately start hearing the super high frequency edge that shows up. And that is because we're applying it just like this, where if square is perfectly at 1, well, then it's actually not going to be doing anything. So if the control is set to 0, the output is 1, meaning that it is applying all of the processing that is causing it to connect the dots between adjacent points. It seems to me like as soon as you are introducing any of the square control, in other words, it's anything more than 0, meaning that square is going to drift downwards from 1.0, it's instantly obvious. Like it really kicks in very quickly. So I feel tapering this with the power function is likely to be useful. And the way we can do that is, since square of 0 is the least amount, and then instantly as soon as you bring any of it in, it's already too much. What we can do is put this param b into a power function. That's going to cause all of its variables that are less than already 1 to become smaller and smaller as they go. Works kind of like this. Now we're doing 1 minus this power function. So if we have it at a small setting like 0.1, then what comes out is 0.01 because it's being multiplied by itself. I could also go with, in fact, I feel like my instinct is telling me I'm immediately going to go to a cubing it, third power, so that if it's set to 0.1, it's going to be 0.001 multiplied by 0.1 3 times, or it multiplied by itself twice because it starts out at 0.1. And when we start cranking it all the way up to 1, well, 1 times itself 3 times is still 1. So we're good. Oh yeah, no, I look forward to you trying out RetroBase. It seems to have gone over well with people. I feel like that one is proving to be something of a success. And one of the things we're going to do today is fool with the upcoming Channel X a little bit and see if we can bring some of the RetroBase mojo into Channel X. Perhaps without changing anything else about it, because RetroBase is using the same type of filter, but not quite. RetroBase is using a filter that is twice as steep as what's in all the versions of Channel. All the versions of Channel are using a high-pass filter, but it's an interleaved IAR high-pass filter. And I should still be able to do the same thing. In fact, I can even incorporate a interleaved version of what's in RetroBase, see whether that clicks for people as well. I suppose there's always the risk that it won't. But, you know, one thing about Channel is that the high passing is way subtler than what you get out of RetroBase. People were responding to it and saying like, oh, it's much too strong. You never need to do anything beyond like 0.1. I'm like, okay, noted, but you still might. So I'm leaving it the way it is. Typically anything that comes out that is not actively broken, it's going to be what it was when it came out because people will already have it in mixes and things. So if you want big changes to how something works, it's going to come out under a different number, much like DRes 5, literally right here with some new stuff going on. So this might prove interesting, and I'm going to tell you why. That is producing the effect of a integer DRes function. It's doing the same thing as the Bezier functions, but it's not a Bezier function. Instead, it's just connecting the dots between points. However, what I'm wondering now is whether I can use this to generate a dynamic DRes. And kind of what I have in mind there. And let's see, do we have... Okay, so this is a double precision, this is a double precision. Stepped is temporary. We're not actually using step in the audio code. That is to help generate this SDRes figure. And that lives here. Let's make some more space around it so I can see what I'm doing. So if SD-res is larger than interesting, So that's cute. I'm not really quite sure it's working, but I'm a little puzzled as to how it's working. Oh, wait, no. I see what is happening and why it's happening. This is just a bypass. Excuse me. That is just a bypass. That is to allow it to not do any deresing at all unless you've actively had deresing enabled. So you have to have it set to something smaller than 1. As trim is what we're generating here. So that's actually probably still fine. I'm sitting here staring at int stepped and the way we're generating strim this way and thinking to myself, does this need to be moved into the audio loop? What's up with tomatoes in the US? Largely it is companies that lobbied the government to not have to inspect their food, being allowed to not inspect their food. I'm probably marginally safer than a lot of people because some of the folks that I'm paying attention to on Blue Sky, there is a black lady on Blue Sky, Miss Asia or something like that, who's very into food safety and is keeping an eye out for all the warnings and things coming out. So she is acting as like, heads up, this particular agency or whatever has issued a recall for this, so maybe keep an eye out. These are the things that have been associated with it. These are the companies that, like Kroger or Taylor Farms or whatever, those are the brand names that it's sold under. People who are following me, heads up. And she's doing that, and I'm following her, so hopefully I'll get warning. A lot of times also, this is stuff that is getting handled and processed and put in bags. Like the Taylor Farm stuff, a lot of what that is about is people who are buying like pre-cut produce. And I typically buy heads of lettuce that are basically straight out the ground half the time, not half the time. Occasionally they haven't even been rinsed off very well and you got to rinse it off or not have dirt on there. And typically the tomatoes I get are like cluster tomatoes and they're just out there exposed rather than being in packages that people buy. So there is still certainly the risk of me picking up something that's going to be bad for me, but I feel like I could go even harder. I could try only getting local stuff. Currently, I haven't really gone to that so hard. So let's see, point cycle. Okay, so this is making subsequent points. Good, good. This is also where I could increment SD-res. Because this is where our output gets to a state where we are recalculating a straight line. this being a thing that generates a straight line. See, this generates a straight line. This is where you calculate what the straight line is to be, except for not, because we're not actually recalculating it in here. But in theory, we could. So there is a number of things I have in mind here, and I'm just kind of trying to wrap my head around it during what I have left of today, which is a couple hours and 15 minutes. I'm going to be doing my usual taco thing. And what I'm trying to wrap my head around here is, let's recalculate SDRes every X samples. Now, it makes some degree of sense to recalculate it while restarting the line drawing process, because we've got this thing where we're drawing a line between points or doing a square wave between points. I have already updated it so that it makes less of a straight, like it hangs on to the basier triangle wave style shape longer, and that's simply an adjustment of how much of a corner is allowed to be in there. So let's consider this. Supposing that wasn't there. Supposing we recalculated it every time point cycle got to or beyond 1. That would look kind of like this. That also means we have to put stepped in a different place. So we have a different one of these. Which means this is actually defined, so we get to not have to define it in here. Should be perfectly safe just using it there. Every time we use it, we're restarting it, so that part should be fine. We're not going to have an S trim right away. And we're going to need to do something with strim, because we've got this thing where it says input sample L divided by equals strim, so it doesn't get to be 0 no matter what. Looks a little bit like we're sort of cheating our way around that, because if it is 0, that can only happen when SDRes is actually 0. I'm not sure we can have that happen. Let's find out. We can. SDRes can actually be 0. It's going to end up being something entirely else. Aurora Dreamweaver, I hear you. You are not mistaken about that. Jonathan, here's a funny thing. I feel like I'm going to agree with some of your points. I feel like some of the mechanics of capitalism work similarly to how the genetic algorithm works. There are mechanics within capitalism that allow some things to sort of find their own level in a way that is actually effective. Many people have problems with capitalism that should be attributed to lack of government, lack of rules. If you attempt to do capitalism and there are no rules, it's not anymore. Instead, it is just law of the wild. So yeah, the concerns with consumerism are sort of like human behavior concerns, which can be laid at the feet of, do we have a working law and justice system? Do we have the ability to evaluate people's behavior? And if they are wildly toxic behavior, stop the people from behaving that way. Then, so you could simply say, yeah, regulation should work. And I think that's fair. Let me get back to this bit. I will trust chat to be doing its chat thing. And I'm somewhat powerless as to whether you guys get in fights or not. Typically not. That's usually not happened. We'll see. And looks like I need to define strim not being here. In fact, I need to define strim in the H file. You know why? Because it's going to persist. Now, is that how I spelled it? No, that was not how I spelled it. That is how I spelled it. And since we're declaring it in the H file, what we also got to do is go up here and say that it is in fact something. Technically, it shouldn't be 0. Not if we want to divide by it, but so we can just be safe that way. And then if we do end up dividing by it because it hasn't been assigned, that could be pretty straightforward. I don't know, Jonathan. I don't know. And then this doesn't get declared here. So what we're going to see there well, one thing I notice is, look at that. I have 2 if statements that are almost the same, but they're not. I'm sure there must have been a reason for that at some point, but I can't tell you what it was. The rest of my stuff doing the same thing? No, not really. No, that was just that way for some reason. Hey, Grins, doing okay. As a matter of fact, Jonathan, the whole reason I did retrobase was because I needed something to be able to do a proper retro-style bass sound for console RD. I needed to do something for the Beatles console emulation. So that's likely to be what ends up going there. And in order to do that, what I'm going to end up doing is having there be a control in there that functions as a high pass, but rather than being able to drop it down to 0, I'm going to make calibrations for the various settings for the console RD plugin where you get to pick, like, okay, this is the earliest version, okay, this is the version that you heard on Revolver and Sgt. Pepper, so on and so forth. This is the version that you heard on the White Album, and they will have different default settings that you will still be able to sweep the high pass up from, so that people have more freedom to do stuff with. If it turns out that the Beatles console had something like switchable high passing that only uses certain frequencies, I'll probably end up dialing it, making it go to those. But there's also the possibility of just letting people go hog wild. Like, people were going, oh, you're letting me turn the high pass up way too high. And I'm like, yeah, so maybe it'll be useful up there. I'll figure something out. Anywho, we've got a DRes, and we've got this going on. And we're calculating out a DRes, which this is just as good. We can do that. Don't mind my stomach grumbling. I'm very hungry. I'll be less hungry when I get to have my tacos. That'll be great. Looking forward to it. This is how I beat the prediabetes thing. According to my doctor, who says, oh yeah, no, you've reversed it. Rather than going in the direction of having to deal with diabetes, you have gone in the opposite direction, and now you are no longer in danger. So it's cool, and that's how I did it. Anywho, we're busy doing this, but what if SDRes was not simply what we have up here? SDRes is swooping its way down to a very low frequency, but it'll go up as high as 1. And it's the power of 2 plus overall scale. So this is basically a number between 0 and 1. And we're kind of rounding it out. And, oh, I bet maybe it's doing that so that I could define stepped. It's being confusing. So something I'm going to have to build into this. I'm going to need to do some kind of polarity reversal thing, not dissimilar to stuff that I've got in clip only. I think clip only. Somewhere in my code base, I have stuff where I am tracking whether the waveform has reversed polarity or not. I know I've got that for zero crosses. Maybe that's what I'm thinking about it. I know I've got that for zero crosses, but what I'm going to need to do is ignore zero crosses and instead pay attention only to, did the waveform reverse itself? Was it going up? Is it now going down? Because I want to count the times that happens. Because if you're throwing a simple waveform in there, like a sine, it's going to do that at the rate of the waveform. But the point being, if I told it to be doing deresing at that frequency, it would equal out to be just that frequency. The whole thing is being inspired by something that went on the Surge forum, where like I was like, here's my wavelet transform thing, look at what it does. And he was isolating, he was turning things into like square waves, but apparently in such a way that it was able to make lower frequency square waves for lower frequency sounds. And I immediately thought, well, hey, what if we derezzed that way? And I commented to the effect, and one of the Surge XT dudes that originally worked at Native Instruments is like, no, that's not what we're doing at all. And I'm like, okay, I'll just go and do it then. And that's what I'm doing today. So that's going to make SDRes be something quite different. However, we've got work to do here as well. I think maybe having a couple of running booleans might do what I need. I think that might be adequate. Oh, and I'm also going to need to do an integer. I'm going to need to keep an integer. So let me figure out good names for it. Let's start with the int. Let's call it direction count. We're counting how many samples in a row it wants to go in one direction. Then we need our booleans. So we will keep that positive if it is going in that direction. And I'm trying to think of, do I need an additional Boolean? So how am I going to work this? We'll reset direction count. We'll increment it every step of the way. And we've got bool set to, is this case true? We're going to need a previous sample. That's what we're going to need. Without one, we can't do this. Typically, I call that last sample. We'll call it last sample. So we're going to take every incoming sample. We're going to store the previous one. And every step of the way, we're going to see whether the current sample is bigger or not than last sample. If the truth statement of that matches going up, we increment direction count. If it's no longer the same as going up, then we're setting going up to false, meaning it's going down. And we've reset direction count, and then we're going to continue incrementing it in the other direction. So maybe that's all we need. Could be all we need. Let's find out. Also, no, I haven't, in fact, given strim its own value. Bada boom. All right, let's start counting samples. Yeah, excuse me. You know, one of the things that doctor is going to look into for me is having successfully gotten myself out of prediabetes, which, yay. I asked about, could it be that I am getting like sleep apnea? Is my sleep getting interfered with? Because honestly, I gotta say, a lot of the times when I'm doing these live streams, and granted I have to concentrate really hard, but I find I'm like yawning. I find that I'm like tired. And I wonder whether I'm getting as good a sleep as I should. I try to, but with a bit of luck, like my Medicaid will hold out, and I will be allowed to do a little test and find out whether that is something that has come on for me. It's certainly not coming on the back of gaining a bunch of weight, because I've been going the opposite direction, but it is still something that one could keep an eye out. And I have a personal friend who ended up getting diagnosed with sleep apnea and started using one of them little machines and found it just completely transformative. She was like, oh my God, this is amazing. I feel so much better. I have so much energy and I'm so much less tired, and holy crap. And, I trust her judgment. So I'm getting that looked into to see whether maybe that is a thing. Meanwhile, let's make this work. Let's also make it be sample L, as long as some of these things are named L, because I'm going to need to do a stereo version of it eventually, so why not get ready to do it now? And these will also be oriented around what channel they are. So I might as well get used to it now. There, that can either be true or false, or technically equal, and I can have it just be in action if it's equal. We shall see. iPhone reference. I see somebody talking about iPhones. Technically, I have one of those, but I don't know what it would have to do with anything. Dum-de-dum. So, there's our Boolean. So the logic of this is all going to be pretty straightforward. Put a few more spaces in here, and then we're going to start talking about what this does and what it means. So, input sample is larger than last sample. Going up is true. So here's the thing. Don't I want to count not the number of samples in a row, but the number of reversals? I want to count the number of reversals. So I think what we're going to do is set this up in such a way that this is giving me the number of reversals, but we're re-evaluating it at each new point that we're extending to. So this is doing a counting, but this is not necessarily going to be resetting direction count. Not yet. If we were resetting direction count in here, that would be another story. We might not even need all this logic. Let's find out. So if input sample L is larger than last sample, going up. Failing that, so yeah, it might be possible to simplify this. I'm speculating on that one now, because we know we need to refer to the last sample, but we're not trying to count see, when we do zero cross, the zero cross meter operates in a similar way, but not the same way. Not the same way at all. The zero cross meter is checking to see whether we've crossed zero, obviously. So that's one of its conditions. And it is tracking the number of samples until we cross zero again. This isn't meant to do something like that. This is meant to count every time the signal reverses itself. So we're technically able to do that. But it looks to me like we're wanting to count the number of reversals and then incorporate that into the size of the DRes somehow. Don't mind me having to think about things. So maybe it's as simple as this. Don't mind me. Meaning we can also use some simple logic and remove a bunch of this stuff because there's nothing in the else cases. I was thinking for a bit like, oh, I'm going to need to incorporate stuff into both sides of these cases, but that's actually not true, is it? In fact, we might be able to boil this all down into one statement, and that would be really cute. Let's see. So this equates to this. This equates to this. So that true. Don't mind me, this is actually not hard. I'm just having to think it through. Oh. I knew I had something going on in there. I'm actually going to need to update going up. But that's fairly straightforward, isn't it? There. All you got to do is do that, and now that Boolean is going to follow after what we're currently doing. So then, where's our logic getting us? There is a logic operator and not an assignment operator. We could also do a not equal. It's going to be true or false regardless. Pretty sure it's going to evaluate the input sample greater than. And then the part that we want it to be able to do is so now I'm just wondering if I have the sequence of things right. So going up equals that. Next input sample will also be larger, meaning it will not have changed direction. So we'll use going down instead. Meaning now we're testing for going down, and if going down is equal to going up, well, that means the previous time input sample was larger, but now input sample is smaller, meaning we've reversed direction. And if going up is false, then input sample was smaller. And then if input sample is less, is not true. Okay, now let's think this out. So the going up part, I can see where that would work. If we are in fact going down, input sample is going to continue to be less than last sample. I do also have to assign last sample. I forgot that part too. We'll do that after this part. There. That should be doing what it's supposed to do. I just don't know whether I have the order of things correct. Okay. Going up means it's larger. If it suddenly turns around and is going down after having gone up, then direction count plus plus. Then going up L becomes false. If input sample L less than last sample, is true, then we're going down. Going up L will be false. So if true equals false, that's not true. True equals false is not true. So it will not continue to add direction count L until it turns around. When it turns around, input sample becomes larger again, meaning it's no longer less than, meaning input sample less than last sample L is now false. Going up L was false. If those are both false at the same time, direction count L plus plus. I think that's all I'm going to need to be able to make this bit work. What I don't have yet is a way of making it do anything. But, you know, one thing at a time. Firstly, here's where we start reevaluating stuff. We've got something funny in here. Well, I do know that I'm going to be wanting to reset this. Going to want to set that back to 1 or 0 or whatever. Hey, that's not what I wanted to do at all. Looking to reset this. Maybe we never want it to be 0. Maybe we always want it to be 1. We've reached the end of point cycle. We can have 1 be its lowest possible setting. And at this point, we're reassigning the actual data values here. So and then under here, we are recalculating this somehow. We need to produce strim. And SDRes goes from 0 to 1. And we've got this little test business going on in here. And if it's 1, it's completely passed through. So I think what we're getting is the ability to snap SDRes to integer numbers of samples to DRes with. What I'm getting out of the stuff that I just added is a number of reversals since the last time we checked. And I'm going to want to try to force that in the direction of more of that means higher frequencies. Though since I'm evaluating it against the previous position where we deresed, rather than evaluating it based on like a time increment, that makes it different. So we can do this. And I could have that be in the H file as well. This is all me trying to get a particular kind of behavior out of this, which is proving to be a bit of a brain breaker, but you know, it is what it is. I'm not sure if I like that. See, I got to keep an eye out for this. So if I have a continuing one that goes on, it has to be assigned to SDRes at least at some point. Otherwise, nothing's going to work. Formerly, we had to assign things like strim So wait a minute. We're using SDRes to increment. It's basically the frequency that we're using. Hi, Chris. Hope all under control on your side. Meh. I don't know if I'd call it under control. It is what it is. I'm trying to do a cool thing. I have a very nebulous sense of what the cool thing is supposed to be. I just have a very clear idea of what I want it to be. It's the same thing where I showed up on the SearchXT Discord and responded to somebody doing work with wavelets by, oh, why don't you do this? And the response I got was, no, that's not what we're talking about. So I'm turning around and wanting to do exactly the thing that I had the idea about. Apparently, it's more difficult than I thought because I can't lock down this idea for anything. But I do have a clear notion of the kind of thing I have in mind. So there's multiple ways I can go about this. Currently, I am counting reversals, not number of samples that we can run before hitting a reversal. If I was trying to keep track of the most samples we can run before hitting a reversal, we'd be counting them up differently, and my logic would be different up top. Currently, that's not what we're doing. We have kept track of the number of times the signal reversed itself, not the largest number of samples that we can do before the signal reverses itself. Which would be similar to the zero cross count, but not the zero cross count. And the whole hope here is to be continuously updating SDRes, which implies that needs to be stored in the H file as well. We're not simply going to be assigning it every time the buffer restarts. That's going to be a different variable. So I'm just trying to get something to work. I'm just going to try to get something to work. I've got a half an hour before thawing out food for tacos. So there's that. I will at least get to have that, whether I get to make this work or not. I'm just getting stuck because we've got this that is counting the number of reversals between the last time we checked and currently. But that might not be a useful calculation. I feel like there's bound to be a way of making it so if the number only goes up when there are long extended runs, it can go to a lower DRes score. And if there are shorter runs, it will go to a higher DRes score. Surely that must be something that this can do. Surely it needs to be opposite to what it currently is. So let's see. I figured out all this logic, right? So if going up equals going up, then plus plus. The difference is if we're doing it this way, we need to keep a constant track of going up, but it needs to not be increasing unless. So what do I mean when I say unless? What I mean by that is unless we do have a reversal, at which point we then immediately reset. What's that give us? And we can make it go to 1 as a base count. Now we've kind of reversed the logic. Now, if we have lots and lots of reversals, what that means is direction count stays really, really, really low. Now, what can we do with that? Nothing else had to change. Oh, something else has to change. We need to make this change. Let's use that. Let's call this something else entirely. Let's set this to something that can't be 0, I don't think. I think it doesn't get to be 0. Yeah, pretty sure it doesn't get to be 0. Let's make these be consistent. As long as we're messing with stuff. So we'll start those at 1. This may end up unused or unused for now. With a bit of luck, this will start looking more sensible. If not, well, I've seen worse days. It'll be fine. And that's all she wrote there. So if SD-res is 1, then we have full pass-through. That would imply that if we get it to that point, it never updates, so that's no good. This we ain't using yet. Maybe it is this that we want to check here. Maybe it is that we want to have set up so that if it is all the way to the right, then we have full audio and we're not deresing a damn thing. Point cycle gets reset. Yes, yes. There it is. So this part only runs when we have scale deres enabled. We can assume that's going to be the case. I believe previously what was up here and is now down here works kind of like this. Meaning maybe so 1 divided by a tiny, tiny value. So stepped can be a very large number. I'm basically trying to see whether I can get it at least to have the same behavior as before, in hopes of being able to do more with it later. I got some very clear ideas as to where I want to take this, and it's going to have to involve stuff like this. Yeah, what the heck. In theory, we got there. We're just not using direction count at the slightest amount. So let's see whether it builds and reproduces the previous behavior. That's a legitimate question, because we're not overriding that behavior with new stuff yet. If we can override that behavior, we will. Here we are. Here's our audio. There's our square wave. There's our filtery. And in fact, the bringing square in more gently is working. More of an edge. Very aggressive. So we have sort of 3 distinct sounds. This one, and this one. What we don't yet have is the ability to reevaluate this based on our additional number. So Rather than do this based on, we can try doing it not based on. 1 is high res. As we go increasingly to 0, we start making larger steps. And now, once we get down to really low frequencies, those are huge, huge steps. Part of that is a test to see whether scale deres is 0 so that we do not simply divide by 0. We don't need to have SDRes within that, so we're not going to. Oh, that's a mistake. That's a mistake. This is not. That is not. Now it's going to do about the same. We're assigning SDRes regardless. We're assigning it to something that is going to be appropriate. We've kept basically the same as we had before. strim still functionally works. What we're trying to do now is update stepped. What to? Well, SDRes becomes a tiny, tiny factor when scale dres is incredibly small, meaning 1 divided by incredibly small fraction becomes a very large number. Very large number is also what we get when direction count is able to go in one direction for a really long period of time, and it gets overridden very quickly when it is not. And of course we have scale dres in here to further manipulate what's happening. Let's try the very basicest of basicest. We are now overriding in that if direction count, which is tracking how long the signal can run, if it's reversing itself a lot, direction count is going to be lower. That's going to force the dres to not go down as slow. We've still got a maximum setting, which is the scale dres, but it's only going to be able to do that if there are low frequencies. If there are high frequencies, it's going to constantly force it to higher dres's. That one line of code should have done something. And direction count can only be 1 or larger than 1. In fact, we don't need to reset it here. We reset it here. We don't need to reset it here at all. That's not how this works anymore. Let's see if our thing still works. Failed, but there's a reason. I call it L. So I failed with that, but not a big serious failure, just a slight oversight. That time it succeeded. Alrighty. So this might be an amusing experience. I'm gradually and painstakingly talking my way through the logic of all of this kind of stuff, but it is to do a thing which I don't believe anybody else has done. And if it works, I get to mess with it further. So we shall see what we have just made happen by running it again and seeing what we get. No derez and no filtering. And as we increase the maximum, we get a rather large maximum. So what does this look like? Let's crank square all the way to 1 so we can really see what it did. And apply. We're not actually filtering. But we're seeing some continuing series of samples. See, with that you can kind of see what it's doing. The more high frequency reversals we have, the more it forces it to throw those highs in. But then when we don't have reversals, it starts throwing in more of these square wavy sections. Let's go all the way to the very beginning. There, bass sound. And that bass sound is being turned into positively square wavy little sections. But as soon as there is any high frequency content anywhere, it kind of overrides it and forces it not to be doing that anymore. Here's just the bass. So if we set it to this, that is a maximum limit that we can reduce. It makes me wonder a little bit whether what it would like to have is either yet another control or bring in this bright control and have it do something. I feel like that could also be a thing. So when we got this, well, that's softening things, but we could also use it to manipulate down res so that it is deresing more aggressively. So what does that mean? Well, we've got it kind of doing the thing. I just feel as if I could be forcing more in the way of deresing. So what does that mean? Bright derez is getting overridden. And it only goes up a certain amount. It's 1 minus power get parameter per MC. So if we crank it up all the way, that is a 0 times 4. But if we turn it way down, it starts to become a larger number. In fact, it's times overall scale even. So there's that. And that's going to be relevant to what we're trying to do. So let's define an int. And what were we calling the scale? Okay, so in theory, we've now got something which is going to be, well, alrighty then, is it going to be 1 to larger, or is it going to not be 1 to larger? If so, do we need to do that later? I'm going to guess that I need to do it later. I don't feel like I need to do it here. I think I need to do it in a different place. Let's try it here, because then it's going to either be 1 or a larger integer. 0.999. Well, no, wait, hang, slow. Whoa, 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 whoa. No, that's not true at all, is it? Dang it. What the crap am I supposed to do with this? Well, let's move it back. What the crap am I supposed to do with this? Well, we want it to become larger integers as that control goes down. And I already started seeing something happen with it. The trouble with all of this is that I'm needing to generate all of this in terms of integers. I could easily have Bright be doing the thing I want. Unfortunately, it's breaking my brain. This produces a logarithmic shape of per MC. This produces 1 minus that, meaning I crank it up all the way, and it's going to be 0. Times 4 times overall scale. And then if I lower it, it's 1 minus nothing, scaled to nothing, logarithmically shaped to nothing. 1 minus logarithmically shaped to nothing times 4 times overall scale. So as that becomes lower, it does produce a higher value. It will still be 0. We can't use 0. But since it's not going to become a negative number the way this is looking, there is one simple solution to that. There. Now it's going to be what I need. And we'll ignore all the rest of this stuff, which is about producing bright trim. Then we just do that. Now let's see what we got. I gotta copy it to the folder first. God, excuse me. I know this is kind of like pulling teeth, but you know, what are we gonna do? I'm trying to make a new sound. We're using the same old thing, but it's going to be real interesting when I start throwing vocals and things into it, because that's going to produce weird results. This is still largely producing vaguely predictable results. So here we are with Bright at full crank. Here it's able to produce high frequency sounds, but then when we start fooling with this, full bright, less, less, less. You see me speculating on whether I could use basis as the other side of downres, which is a fair question. Maybe. Dunno. If I did that, then it would go back to having 4 controls, but one of them would be square. So what did that make? Well, the filter is engaged, so we kind of see that the filter is engaged there. That very first bass stuff should be doing something though. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I can see how that is engaging. So, yeah, in theory, we can make stuff that really messes with and wrecks bassy frequencies, but arbitrarily lets higher frequencies through based on what Bright is set to do. That said, I am not certain that it is correct to have that be part of the post and pre-filtering stuff. But one thing I do know is that I gotta go and thaw out my taco cheese. So, tell you what. Let's reset that. Set it to straight lines. Yeah, that's actually very effective. I'm really beginning to think that that needs to be its own control, which is doable. But let me leave this playing. I'm going to be right back. I've got my taco stuff to deal with. Alrighty. I was getting my taco cheese thawed out, And I've been doing so much work on meter. This is the little USB stick that I put in my car. There's a bunch of things I'm going to have to copy over to that now because I've been measuring everything. Almost all of my CD-based audio, entire collections of music, like my entire Depeche Mode collection, my entire King Gizzard collection, have now been measured in meter. I'm just finishing up the final ones, which are some MP3s of a tracker musician who goes by Euphoria. And I'm just finishing those up, and then it's going to be over to the countless numbers of vinyl-sourced stuff that I've got to measure. So if you thought that was weird, I bet I'm going to still have to do some changes here, but...
Love me, love me, love me, say you do. Let me fly away with you.
That's not quite as weird as I thought it was going to be.
Love me, love me, love me.
First bit.
Love me, love me, say you do. Love me, love me, love me, say you do. Love me, love me, love me, say you do. Love me, love me, say you do. Love me, love
So that should be a bass.
me, say you do. Love me, love me, say you do. 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 Love me,
And I should be able to scale this, but I'm not sure it's quite working.
Love me, say you do. Love me, say you do. Love me, away with you, 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 away with you.
I feel like I should be able to do an octave divide. And if I go above this, it stops downresing. I don't know why it's not downresing that. Okay, clearly more needs to be discovered here. So, what can we further do with this to make it do something interesting? So direction count L equals bass downresed. That needs to be a separate thing. That can't just be the bright control, because we need to be able to set the bright controls and the bass controls to full on and set the dereser to either connect the dots or square wave. That's actually already working. So it's time to start adding more controls to this. And perhaps renaming what's there. Good, sorry about that. So it's going to act kind of like this. And that. And this. So square, that's the amount of squareness in the wave. Bright and basis are pre and post filters. Those work the way that DRes 4 worked. Look, they're all exactly 6 letters. We'll go with that. So top res, that's going to be the value that we're starting with here. And maybe crank it up more as we go. It'll act like the previous scenario. Bottom is how much further it goes when you're scaling it up based on the low frequency stuff happening. I don't know whether top res needs to also be fooled with, but we can tell that to be like that, at which point bright and basis by default let through a unfiltered sound, because that's what that will do. Now we have to go and make everything else accommodate those changes. Fairly straightforward. And then shift everything along a bit, which is slightly less straightforward, but still mostly straightforward. Fine, fine. Haven't added any new controls here. That's going to need to change. And everything steps up one. So this is not good enough, but it's a start. Scale DRes is actually functioning as make this start happening. So technically, that's fine. And it's the one on top that I need to change and make be something else. Specifically, we are not going to try to do base downres there anymore. It needs to be a factor of param A now. So how are we going to go about doing that? Or indeed exaggerating it? Kind of like this. Scale DRes just became this. We'll make it be even more intense. And then what we're going to do is literally just remove this, because we need to use it for something else. And throw additional parenthesis on all of that so that we can just straight up use it in place of the other. Like that. And then that becomes param A, and we're no longer doing the bright deres stuff anymore. Now let's see what we got. Also, what we can do is make this be slightly more consistent. There, see, now that is doing that. So should I be doing this differently? I don't know if I should. Direction count starts there. Well, we've got the new control. Let's see what we got. Got a little more than 40 minutes left to stream before I snacked on some peanuts, so either my stomach will stop growling or it'll growl more. Don't know. Remains to be seen. Or heard, technically, not seen. Be a little weird if you could see that. Back to where we started. Back to this. Only now, if bottom is not connected, and we can reverse all of these things this way. So this is meant to go like this. Top res is not actually engaging this way until so we can force a deeply down-resed thing, even with bright this high up. We can brighten it up by making it all square waves. Boy, volume really jumps up when we do this. That's probably not correct. So this should be applying more or less of this based on how it's being set. I feel like we have a nasty tendency of having it not be engaged, and I should be able to lower top res and have it kick in. So I feel like I have a quick change that should happen, where if bottom is all the way up here and we're sliding top res down, we should be getting the previous deres behavior, except for without the square that I've added to it. But a fixed down res. So let's see what we can do about that. So base down res, that's where we started. Bottom deres continues to get smaller as we go. At its highest setting, so let's see. Edit all in scope. That'll show me where it gets used. There. So if bottom DRes less than 1, then we start doing this stuff. And stepped is either 1 divided by bottom DRes, as long as it's not literally 0. So how can we manipulate that? Well, step gets bigger as bottom DRes gets smaller. In theory, if we were basing all of this on bottom DRes times direction count L, that's going to force it to kick in. And then it'll still be available, and that'll make it potentially be even larger values. Limited, of course, to how big direction count L is. So that might be real strong. Let's find out what that does. We can't do 0, but divided by the smaller this is, the larger step becomes. So we need to have bottom DRes divided by direction count L. And then, of course, build it into the logic. And then we shouldn't need to do this anymore because it's already built in. Let's see what happened. Pretty sure it's not going to blow up. But it might get a little crazy. But then we enjoy that, don't we? That's the thing that we like when it goes weird. We're just going to see whether it does the basic thing I had in mind or not. And I have not gotten, or maybe Thursday can be working on channel X and incorporating what was present in the new retro base. That could be a Thursday thing. We could do that Thursday. We're all caught up with this today. Back to what I had before. Now let's see whether top res can bring this in. Can top res bring this in when bottom is not cranked? Okay, it's kind of sensitive is what it is. We can turn it off completely, and then it's immediately kind of sensitive. What if we don't have square on? Okay. Well, that's kind of interesting. I'm plainly hearing it getting real busy, but that might be a factor of forcing it to be engaged this way. I feel like it's too aggressive now. Like if I apply this, it's very strong to be sure. But here's what we get. We're doing square at 0, meaning we're not doing square waves out of it. But when we multiply bottom by top res and have top res engaged, we're starting to get ginormous effects out of this. It's taking the low frequency stuff and going crazy with it. That's maybe not optimal. I mean, yes, this is a bass, but that is kicking in far too hard. So we're going to call that an experiment that did not work. We're going to call that an experiment that did not work. And that was the change. So this is now the maximum extreme. It's a 0 to 1. So what else can we do? We could have direction count L not just straight up increment by number of samples, but instead be scaled somehow. So how would that work? So it starts at bass down res. Well, you know, I'm pretty sure what I could do is that doesn't necessarily need to be an integer, does it? I've got it as 1, but a lot of my deresi stuff actually runs on floating point. And this might be exactly the sort of place where ironically a double precision number might come in handy. So let's see what we get out of that. There, so that gets to still be starting at 1. This is a 0 to 1. This gets to be scaled. So if it was inverse, how often do I apply this? Where do I apply this? That is invertible. All right, see you later, Grants. That is indeed invertible. We could just flip it. let's do exactly that. Boom. Now, this needs to be reversed. And this needs to be reversed. And this needs to be reversed. There. Because we're doing those because we don't apply that nearly as often as slightly up thread where we're going to be applying it every damn sample. Like this. There. Now let's see what we got. I think that should produce a effect. We can but hope. Essentially what we're trying to do here is get it so that when we play with that top control, we get a simple DRES behavior that just it brings in the fundamental DRES behavior, but then the bottom one, as you start fooling with that, it widens the window based on the frequencies that are inside. And that could produce interesting results. That it's just a question of, does it? So top res, bottom square, bright basis should produce a sound. It does. Okay. I guess we have to do a different check for that, don't we? Highs, and then progressively darker as we go. And then it starts throwing only the deepest of bass when we do this. So that's maybe too far. So we're trying to make it so this does something. Top. And the progressively more down wrist. But bottom kicks in when we continue dropping it. So we're going to have to incorporate this as well. No question about it. And bass down rest is a double. Makes me wonder what I can get out of it by playing more dangerously. Direction count L is a float. Base downres is a float, well, a double floating point. It's having bottom dres added. Bottom dres is a very low number at the top. Well now, have I miscalculated this? I think I've miscalculated this. I think it wants to be direction, well, no, wait, no, hang on, slow down. No, direction count skies up to ginormous numbers when you want it to be all basey and stuff. So having it be a tiny number is actually correct for up at the top of the scale. Well, one of the things I was going to play with was this. So we can have it be at 0, or nearly. We can maybe live real dangerously and have that basically start as 0. But then we check by checking both of them. So if we do this, at least one of these has to be engaged. And then this all turns on. But then either of these can be a 0. So that's kind of interesting. Also, I feel like this is far too effective, so I'm going to dial it back again. We're no longer referring to these from this. So this gets to be a 0. If I edit all in scope, it'll show me where they all are. Direction count L then can become 0 if you tell it to be. So logically, then I need to go and look for whether I'm dividing by direction count L. Gets to be a large number. We're not really dealing with what happens when it's a tiny number. We're testing from there. If stepped is larger than stepped equals, that means it can become 0. That means it can be divided by 0. So I'll just do a there we go. Now it can't divide by 0, so we're fine. Now we see what this does. And yay, I'm pretty sure I still have the extremely exaggerated ability to go ridiculously basey. You know, that's probably fine. So step larger than direction count L, so that's our limit. That means if we have high frequencies happening, all basically seems to work. I think the next thing is just throw a bunch of weird stuff at it, see what we get. And we'll start with our, maybe we'll start with seeing why we get that volume boost in there. Yeah, I'm suspicious of that. Why do we even have this? SD-res is part of this. Oh, are we having a problem? We are having a problem. What caused that? Well, that's weird. Now what? I does not understand why this would have changed. Let's uncomment that and see if it still works. Okay. Don't get it, but somehow this doesn't make any sense. So what's your little... Oh! I see. Look at you. You're a bracket that's sitting all the way over there. I commented you out by mistake. Let's not. Okay, so that means I can take strim back out again. That was the missing part. Oh, also I've got Twisted Wave open. Let's build that again. It doesn't automatically assign. Let's move it over to where it needs to be without the application being open. Now it'll be able to see the new one. Okay, so this is without strim. I think I don't need strim. I think strim is useless or is doing unhelpful things. Now what do we got? Okay, what did this do? Stop doing anything. Okay, we fixed this part. That could expand back out again. I turned it to 4. That is not actually helpful. Trying to figure out if we need to do this a different way. But we'll start with base down res. We'll start with it being at 1. I think we don't need these parentheses here. All these tiny little differences between things. It's a caution. It's weird. That's probably the change that I just made probably helped. It is just kind of challenging. Making sense of this nonsense. So direction count out plus bottom dres else equals. So what we're meant to do, what this is meant to be able to do, is have this dres happening, but the dres fluctuates according to the frequencies going through it. Meaning if you got bassy stuff, it'll throw bassier dres's dynamically at you. It's supposed to be adapting as it goes. And the top part is supposed to put a ceiling on it so that you can have it engaged and doing its thing, and it automatically kicks in a top level dres even if bottom isn't expanding it outwards to the full basic craziness. In so doing, it should be possible to adjust that top control to where it's clearly grating and grunging and doing its thing, and then broaden the range of that using bottom dres. Let's jump back into the breach, having expanded the top one out a little bit, and see what we've got. 10 minutes before tacos. I get to have tacos today. Let's do the voice stuff again. Might as well be a little obnoxious. Here's a different section of voice. Now, what can we make this voice do? First of all, nothing much happening except for it turns into a square wave.
Love me, love me, love me, say you do. Love me, love me, love me, say you do.
I don't really hear anything happening.
Love me, say you do. Love me, love me, love me, say you do.
But now I do.
Love me, love me, love me, say you do. Love me, love me, love me, say you do. Love me, love me, love me, say you do. Love me, love me, love me, say you do. Love me, love me, love me, say you do. Love me, love me, love me, say you do. Love me, love me, love me, say you do. Love me, love me, love me, say you do. Love me, love me, love me, say you do.
Okay.
Love me, love me, say you do.
We can't really kick in top res very well, can we?
You do. Love me, love me, love me, say you do. Love me, love me, love me, say you do. Love me,
it's not giving me much.
Love me, love me, love me, say you do.
The hope was to be able to make it go scrunch, but into a fixed frequency res using top res. Bottom expands out that range. That's not what I'm getting. What happens if we go hog wild with it? So 1 minus pow per m a. So that would be 0 down resed at sort of its full crank. It's times overall scale, it's times 8. 1 minus by even a scaled per m a. Maybe I don't need it to be scaled that way. Let's try not scaling it and see what we get. Like I want it to kick in fairly aggressively, so 1 minus just per m a means full crank, we're dealing with 0. Times anything, it's still 0. Base down resed is 0, and our starting direction count L starts at that. Mind you, where else does it show up? Here. So bring it off of 0 and this starts getting involved. So I should be able to see that happen. My problem is this needs to be base down rest plus 1. It's simply not kicking in. Now let's see what we get. It's able to start at 0, and if it's too close to 0 and never actually increments, it never goes beyond literally 1 sample, which is not something that we can hear. We don't get to do turning every individual sample into a square wave version of itself, is just the same thing that we started with. So it's got to scale up a little bit. And we're going to go back to that same voice. And indeed the same noise. And we're going to see whether we can make it freak out a little bit harder using only that top meter. So this should turn it into a deresed square wave of about the same volume as before.
Love me, love me, love me, say you do. Love me, love me.
I'm not hearing it, but maybe it's because bottom is doing nothing.
Love me, say you do. Love me, love me, love me, say you do. Love me, love me.
I'm not seeing much of a change here.
Love me, love me, love me, say you do. Love me, love me, love me, say you do. Love me, love me, love me, say you do. Love me, love me, love me, say you do. Love me, love me, love me, say you do. Love me, love me,
Okay.
love me, say you do. Love me, love me, love me, say you do. Love me, love me, love me, say you do. Love me, love me, love me, say you do. Love me, love me,
Okay.
love me, say you do.
The S's are happening here, but not there. So top res is working, but it's refusing to work when bottom is all the way up here, and possibly that is because what we are adding is bottom scaled by 1. So this is adding what we add, but that stops. If this is like here, we're starting at whatever this is, but then we never add anything. So what that means is direction count L plus equals bottom deres plus base downres? Does that even make sense? One way to find out. 3 minutes to find out. We're going to try it. We're going to see what it does. And I just misspelled that. That's fine. So plus that, also plus base down resed. Or maybe it just wants to be direction count plus bottom dres plus 1. I thought it was going to be bottom dres scaling. Bleh. Let's see what it does. Let's see what it does. Very little time for... Oh, I'm glad you asked because it's almost done with the stream. Absolutely not. Absolutely not, I did not. Nor should I have. That would have been bad. No, I absolutely did not add ultrasonic filtering in every plugin I released. Thank goodness. Currently working on a thing that all of the plugins are going to get, which is a basically one sample wide window for aliasing management, which is not to say removal, but just management. Okay. What did we get now?
Love me, love me, love me, say you do. Love me, love me, love me.
Okay, it didn't do anything.
Say you do. Love me, love me, love me, say you do. Love me, love me, love me, say you do. Love me, love me, love me, say you do. Love me, love me, love me, say you do. Love me, love me, love me. Love me, love me, love me, say you do. Love me, love me, say you do.
We got something. We totally got something. Oh, I'm not even interested in the performance. It would hurt the sound. It would hurt the sound. You can't just go adding filters to things.
Love me, love me. Love me, love me, love me.
The range of this needs to be adjusted.
Love me, love me, say you do. Love me, love me, love me, say you do.
But we're starting to get into something.
Love me, say you do. Love me, love me, love me, say you do. Love me, love me, love me, say you do. Love me, love me, love me, say you do. Love me, love me, love me, say you do. Love me, love me.
These are very interactive.
Love me, say you do. Love me, love me, love me, say you do. Love me, love me, love me, say you do. Love me, love me.
Okay, here's the top end.
You do. Love me, love me, love me, say you do. Love me, love me, love me, say you do. Love me, love me, love me, say you do. Love me, love me, love me, say you do. Love me, love me, love me, say you do. Love me, love me, love me, say you do. Love me, love me, love me, say you do. Love me, love me, love me, say you do.
Yep, I'm getting a kind of transformed wave out of that. It's getting weird. It's no longer just one fixed note. I feel like I'm going to want to be fiddling with these some. In particular, bottom deres. So how does this work? Well, if one is all the way up, and of course we can make that be bigger. And the way that bottom is scaled is relevant too. That might be nice. What would happen if that was not a power function anymore? If it was not a power function anymore, middle positions would be closer towards where it's not getting rounded to. If it was not inverse, then the settings in the middle would be forced towards the leftmost. Since it's inverse and the power function is happening, settings in the middle are being forced towards higher, which is proving to be somewhat ineffective, which means maybe we don't want that power function in there. Even though it's got the overall scale term in it. Boom. Now what are we looking at? Because it got scalable up to unreasonable sizes. And yeah, I know it's taco time. I'm hanging around a little bit longer. I showed up late anyway, so it's like I'm not going to go too crazy with it. Oh, I'm sure people do. I'm sure that's one of the reasons I chase people away from my streams, is I keep doing the same damn thing again. But one more little burst, slightly different focal clip. Let's see where it's behaving today. With these all the way up, we should hear nothing.
For my love is like the wind.
Sure enough, that doesn't do anything.
Like the wind. For my love is like the wind. For my love is like the wind. For my For my love is like the wind. For my love is like the wind. For my love is like...
Okay, that was the wrong thing to do. Let's quick put it back, and then maybe we will call that good enough for now. Because that was a change that did not help anything. And we were so close to having it actually be nice. For values that nice that mean doing a horrible noise. We will very rapidly bounce off of that one last time and then load up some drums, do those, and then call it a day. So here's this one more time. Even slightly different audio again.
Away with you, let me fly. Away with you, let me fly. Away with you, let me fly.
So you're basically changing the top res. You can push it to bright sounds or darker sounds. There's a lot of range in here.
Let me fly away with you.
And separating them like this means that the distortion gets really arbitrary. Like it's not a consistent sample rate at all anymore. And if you cross them over, you kind of don't get anything. So that's pretty gnarly of a dereser. It's a pity that this entire range doesn't do anything, but and lastly, I promised drums. Oh, that's not the right thing to do at all. I promised drums. I will show some drums. Same old drums as I always have. Until the time that I get new drums. 33 megs, 340 megs. So this is the one I'm going to want. Now if we apply it to that, something weird will happen. Square wave mode. Maximum. So what we do is we drop top res to get it to kick in. And we can set square to off. So for something like this, we have so little in the way of deep bass that we have to kick it in a little bit more to get it to do something. So how's that for a wacky sampler style reinvention of the sound? Start with this and end up with this. That's pretty beefy. then one more crazy trick, which now I don't have in Open Recent, sadly, so I better go and find it. Long sign. So this is just a sine wave. Let me turn this down. It's going to be loud. This is just a sine wave. Let's have a little more crackle. Oh, we've gone stereo. It's become nonlinear. It is a sine wave. DRes 5. We will see when this one is done, but I think it's gotten to a place where it's capable of doing a lot more interesting things than DRes 4, let's just say. So that should be fun. Maybe I'll demonstrate it with a sine, just like that. Anywho, it's 5:18. I get to go and have tacos now. I'm real hungry. I think I've earned them. It's all good. So on that note, I will talk to you later. I'll be back on Thursday, which would be a good time to dig into Channel X. I feel like it would be good to get Channel X ready, even though we've got things like this to play with. And I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.